They called him many names, but none cut deeper than the shame of the Apache. From the moment Tahoma could walk, the whispers followed him through the dusty paths of the reservation. He was too quiet, too weak, too unsure. His legs were not strong like the other boys. He limped when he ran, stumbled when he danced, and tired when others still pushed forward. Some said the spirits had cursed him, that he would never amount to anything. Others pitied his widowed mother for having a son who seemed destined to bring nothing but sorrow. Yet Tahoma's dark eyes, though shy and often lowered to the ground, carried something that no one noticed at first, a quiet fire that refused to die, no matter how strong the winds of scorn blew against it. As the years went by, Tahoma learned to live with the weight of rejection pressing against his chest. Every ceremony, every gathering, every test of skill became another reminder that he was different. When the other young men rode horses bareback across the plain, he trailed behind, clutching the mane, falling, bruising, standing again only to fall once more. When the boys wrestled and laughed, he stayed at the edge, pretending not to care while his hands dug into the earth to keep from crying. He was called weak, slow, worthless, words that stung like arrows. But when the world slept, Tahoma lay awake and whispered to the stars, "If I cannot be strong like them, then let me be strong in another way. Show me my path." His path revealed itself not through triumph, but through tenderness. One evening, while gathering water, he found a wounded hawk near the river bank, its wing bent and bleeding. The others might have ignored it. After all, survival was cruel and the hawk was of no use if it could not fly, but Tahoma's heart refused to turn away. He carried the struggling bird home, bound its wing with strips of cloth, fed it with scraps of meat, and whispered prayers over it each night. Weeks later, when the hawk took flight again, circling once above his head before disappearing into the horizon, Tahoma felt a warmth in his chest unlike anything before. In that moment, he understood, strength was not always in muscles or in victories. Sometimes, strength lived in the patience to heal, in the courage to care when others would not. Word spread quietly. When children scraped their knees, they ran to Tahoma. When an elder's horse fell sick, he was the one who stayed late into the night, stroking the animal, finding herbs, refusing to give up. Yet the whispers of the shame of the Apache did not stop. They said kindness was weakness, and that no warrior's blood ran in his veins. Tahoma heard it all but held to the memory of the hawk taking flight, reminding himself that dignity could be born from gentleness. Then came the drought, the season that would test the entire people. The river thinned into a trickle, the earth cracked, and hunger shadowed every home. Hunters traveled far but returned empty-handed. Children cried from thirst, and elders weakened by the day. Fear grew heavy over the tribe, and hope seemed ready to break. It was in this time of despair that destiny placed its hand upon Tahoma. One evening, as he wandered farther than usual in search of herbs, he heard faint bleating from a canyon nearby. Curious, he climbed down carefully, his weak leg trembling with each step, until he found a small herd of mountain goats caught between fallen rocks. Trapped and starving, they had no way out. For anyone else, it might have been fortune, meat to feed many, but to Tahoma, it was something more. He saw in their panicked eyes the same helplessness he had felt all his life. Instead of killing them, he spent hours moving stones, cutting brush, guiding the herd slowly toward freedom. His hands bled, his body ached, but he did not stop until the last goat had climbed back to the heights. As they vanished into the cliffs, one goat stumbled and nearly fell, but Tahoma caught it, steadying its path. Later, when he returned to the village empty-handed, some mocked him for failing to seize the chance to bring food. But days later, those same goats returned on their own, grazing nearer the camp, unafraid of him. They came again and again, as if offering themselves willingly. Soon the tribe had milk to drink, hides to keep warm, and meat for the weakest, all without endless hunts. What had seemed like foolish weakness was revealed as extraordinary providence. Tahoma's compassion had opened a door that raw strength never could. For the first time, the people looked at him with different eyes. Not all, but some. The children no longer called him the shame, they followed him, eager to learn how to gentle a frightened animal or tend a wounded bird. Even the elders began to murmur that perhaps the spirits had marked him not with a curse, but with a gift. Yet Tahoma himself remained humble, never boasting, always reminding them that what he did was simple, to treat life as sacred, no matter how small. But destiny had yet another trial in store. One summer, a band of outsiders, desperate settlers driven by their own hunger, trespassed into Apache land. They came not with friendship, but with rifles, and in a raid they captured several children, hoping to force the tribe into trade. Panic rippled through the camp. Warriors prepared to fight, but they feared for the lives of the little ones. In the council, voices rose with anger and despair. It was then that Tahoma, who rarely spoke, stood up. His voice trembled, but his eyes were steady. "Let me go," he said. "They will not see me as a threat. I will walk into their camp unarmed. If I fall, let it be only me." The council gasped. Some called it madness. But the mothers, weeping for their children, looked at Tahoma with desperate hope. At last, the chief nodded. And so, at dawn, Tahoma limped across the plain alone, carrying nothing but a white cloth tied to a stick. When the settlers saw him approach, they laughed. Here was no warrior, no enemy to fear, just a frail boy limping, hands open. But Tahoma spoke gently, his words carrying not defiance but understanding. He told them of the drought, of the hunger, of how they were not so different in their suffering. He knelt before them, offering himself as a hostage if they would only release the children. Something in his humility pierced through the hardness of the strangers' hearts. Perhaps they saw their own sons in his trembling frame. Perhaps they recognized courage in its purest form, not the courage to fight, but the courage to give oneself entirely. Slowly, almost reluctantly, they agreed. The children were released. When Tahoma led them back to the camp, mothers fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. For the first time, the entire tribe gathered around him not with scorn, but with reverence. The chief placed a hand on his shoulder and said aloud for all to hear, "They once called you our shame. But today, you are our pride. The pride of the Apache." From that day forward, the name clung to him not as a burden, but as an honor. No, Tahoma never became the strongest warrior, nor the fastest rider. But he became something greater, the one who taught his people that kindness is not weakness, that compassion is not shame, and that the heart can triumph where weapons fail. He healed the wounded, comforted the grieving, and reminded the children that true strength begins with love. Years later, when he had grown old and the children of those children gathered at his feet, they would ask him to tell the story of the hawk, or the goats, or the day he faced the rifles with empty hands. And Tahoma would smile softly and say, "They called me the shame. But you must understand. There is no shame in being different. There is only shame in failing to love. And love, my children, will always be our greatest pride." And so the boy once scorned by his people left behind not just memories, but a legacy. His name lived in their songs, not as the outcast, but as the gentle warrior whose greatest weapon was compassion. The story of Tahoma traveled beyond his tribe, whispered by travelers, told by parents to their children, passed from one generation to the next. And in every telling, the truth remained the same: sometimes the smallest flame, guarded with tenderness, can grow into the brightest fire. Because strength is not always in the arm that strikes, but in the hand that heals. Because pride is not always born of glory, but of goodness. Because even those once called a shame can become the heart of a people. And so it was with Tahoma, the pride of the Apache.